Hello everybody, Arxis here with another episode, another top 10. Top 10 most overpowered one-cost cards. This video is similar to video which I did in past, which was called Top 10 Most Overpowered Cards. So somebody probably may ask, why do I do this again? Well, there's actually two reasons for this. First, there have been like some expansions and many new cards been added, which mean there is more card to discuss, and I maybe in the future do like an updated version of this video, which actually is something which I can do with any videos which already exist. So yeah, there's many new cards. That's the first reason. A second reason is, in my first video, I kind of feel like it is like not enough, because there is much more overpowered cards in the Hearthstone than I can put in the one video. So I actually decided doing this way and basically do 10 most overpowered cards for each cost, -0 obviously. Because like I said, there is many overpowered cards in the game, and honestly I really love Hearthstone, but seriously Blizzard really don't doing good job in terms of balancing. Especially you can actually notice most of the cards on this list are class specific cards, because even if there are cards which are neutral, even if they are overpowered, at least they can be used by anyone, which helps sort of balance things, and they really don't feel nearly as cheap. But with class specific cards, I don't think so. So yeah, so we doing a top 10 one cost card, top 10 most overpowered one cost card, and I actually prepared like a little list. I have my reasons why I think these cards are overpowered, which I of course tell you, and yeah, we can do this. So it's also giving me like excuse to do 7 more videos, one for each cast. So that will be fun, because you never can get bad with old-fashioned criticism. Yeah. And I know I probably repeat myself at this point, but as long as Blizzard don't fix the problem, long as I talk about this. So I really don't do. I actually started to think it seems to be like a little awkward for me, but to be perfectly honest, I think it's much more embarrassing for Blizzard, because other games like StarCraft, Diablo, Warcraft, World of Warcraft, they are really well balanced. Hearthstone not as much. So yeah. So I think that is like for introduction, and now we can actually start. So let's do this. Number 10. Okay, we starting with the Binding Heal. I think this cannot actually surprise anyone, because this spell is pretty ridiculous. Like, this spell can basically heal like 10 total of 10 health per 1 crystal. I think that is way too much. Again, for some reason, healing spells are with their strength much more generous than a damaging spell. I don't know why. Possibly because damaging spell have bonus to spell damage, and healing spell don't have anything like this. So I guess they should be a little stronger, but at the same time the effect is you need the bonus for healing first and then it's bonus, and I think it's still a little too much, because with ability to heal, it's like your minions can basically survive things which they normally wouldn't survive. Especially if we're talking about priest card, there are cards which can get some beneficial effects when somebody is healed and when it's combined with this card, it can be like super powerful. It doesn't seem to be like super overpowered. There is definitely a reason why this card is so low on the list, because there are cards which are much more overpowered than this, but I think this card is still pretty OP. Number 9. Marker Photos, another pretty overpowered card. So this card giving you +1/+1 to all you minions for 1 crystal. Which means if you have full board, then you can have potentially +7/+7. Granted, it's divided between all characters, but for 1 crystal I think it's a little too much. I mean, you have, for example, this card, which can do exactly same thing, but for 2 crystals. I mean, sure, you can use it for other purposes, which the first one can do, but that doesn't mean anything. That's still too much for 1 crystal. So, yeah, I think this card is pretty ridiculous. Not as really ridiculous as other cards, but I think it's a little too much. If this card be like one of those cards, druid cards, which are like choose +1 to health the all minions or +1 to damage all minions, that will be much better. But this is, I think this is too much. Number 8. And now we have a Mannheim. I don't think anyone is actually surprised by this card being here. So technically, this card have really good stats. This card have really good stats for its price. But like, this is not enough. It also can gain attack really fast. Due to his 3 hit points, which for 1 cast card is a lot, it can survive surprisingly lot of punishment for 1 crystal card, and even if its damage is low, it can get really fast. That is as long as lots of spells is used, which is exactly what almost most mages do. Like, it's pretty ridiculous. The one thing which makes this card feel even stronger, it's a fact it's a 1 cost card, and this card can get easily be like free card in a second turn, which is way too much. On top of that, when you can play it like one thing which make it feels even stronger, it's fact it's cost 1 crystal and you can play it really early. I think for like this card, I think it's a little too much. I mean, I guess like probably you can do something, but I don't know. I think that this is way too much, and this card can be really annoying because it's low hit points, and because it's high hit points and low hit points, it can be basically played really early, and it's relatively difficult to remove, especially on first turn. And only thing which you need to do is basically push using your spells to basically defeat enemies, while this card getting more and more strength. It can, like, obviously this card cannot survive super long because 3 hit points really isn't that much for like later, but at the start is a lot. So even if this card die, and it will probably really early, then this card before it's die, it's able cost lots of damage, and I think it's a little too much. I mean, this card need some like restriction. Let's say its damage cannot be higher than its hit points. That will be relatively fair. Card will be still strong, still useful, but not nearly as it's right now. I mean, in some occasion, I basically see like mages being able, without any problems, like cast any spell, and this card like get +1 in every turn, sometimes even more than +1, and it can survive like 2, 3, sometimes 4 rounds. If this card get +1 in every turn, that is like +1 at first turn, +2 second, that's 3, that is 6, that is 10, which means this card can do sometimes 10 damage, and that is actually really not too much. That is actually even not as much. This card can do much more, and sometimes it will, actually many times. I personally, I really hate this card, because I think this card is really unfair, and I think mages are already strong as they are, because they have tons of damage spells, and I don't think they need any card which allowing them do like even more damage. I think they're already strong as they are, with tons on tons of like damage dealing spells. I think this card is really overpowered and really unfair. Number 7, and we have another druid spell, Jade Arrow. Yeah, so I think this card is really overpowered. I think like idea of Jade Golems, it's overpowered in general. But from all Jade based cards, I think this one is the most overpowered, because 2 reasons. A, it has 1 mana cost, which means if you play this card like really late in the game, it can for 1 crystal summon like 10 creature or even more. Like I believe like a highest value of golems is I believe 30, which is pretty ridiculous. On top of that, this card is one of those cards which is like choose one, and you can add like more in your deck, which means this card have like it's not strong. This card is not strong immediately. It needs a little bit of build up, but at the same time it has potential like increase its value infinitely. So it can be pretty ridiculous. If this card be strong immediately, then it will be definitely higher on this list. Because it needs this build up, it's actually not as big as other cards, but I think it's still pretty ridiculous. It is little situational. It's you need definitely build your deck around this feature if you want to take advantage from this. But I think Jade's cards are definitely overpowered. All of them are overpowered. But I think this one is worse than the others because how low mana cost it has, and also because has potential like having basically infinite amount of copies in your deck, and that's pretty ridiculous. Like it's good, it's you need that build up that kind of give your opponent chance to react, but after you reach a certain level, after you reach something like, let's say like 3, 5, 6 golem, then it's really difficult to stop, and then it's become a lot unfair. I generally like idea of Jade Golems, but my problem is this card have a limit, but I think this limit is too high. I think this card should be like little like more restricted. Like let's say you can like I don't know, maybe I have actually interesting idea. Maybe it will be much better if those Jade Golems be separated basically in 2 categories. Cards which can make Jade Golems and cards which can upgrade Jade Golems. Similar way as Cthulhu work. Because honestly, I think I think like Cthulhu is generally like really overpowered, but I think these cards are like much worse. Compare the Cthulhu, like if I compare Jade Golem and Cthulhu, then I think like Jade Cthulhu is much better balanced. Even Kutun is overpowered in my opinion, but I think this card is much worse. So yeah, I like the idea of Jade Golem, but I think they're good, but they're a little too good, and I don't like that. I think they should be a little tame. Number 6, Insize Potion. This card is pretty ridiculous. Because how this card work, this card basically gives -3 to attack the on turn to your enemy. All of them. Only for one attack, but that is still like really powerful effect. If you think about it, this card in some fashion work basically same way as Bloodlust. Except Bloodlust give you +3, but this card give your enemy -3. But generally it's pretty much same thing. Effect is pretty much similar. Except there is one difference. I have not a problem with the Bloodlust because Bloodlust cost 5 mana. This one costs 1 mana. What the hell? Like seriously. Who made this card? This card is pretty ridiculous. This card should do, because it do basically same thing like Bloodlust, then this card should make basically cost, because it do almost same thing like Bloodlust, in that case should cost almost same mana as Bloodlust. For some reason somebody get idea like let's make it cost 1. I mean sure, there's one thing. True is the Bloodlust can increase value of damage infinitely, because that is basically, well, that is technically a highest like level how far you can go, but in a normal circumstances you never reach that level. With damage getting down, there actually is a limit, and basically the card cannot reach a lower damage than 0, which for example mean if somebody have on board, let's say this card, then it's reduced only 1 damage and 2 is wasted. That is true. In this case the card seems to be a little more situational and a little less effective in a specific situations than Bloodlust. I can see that, but I think it's still too much. I think it's still cast. It still should like be more than just 1, because I think 1 is way too cheap for such an effect. Even with the limitations which I mentioned right now, I think it's still too much. Number 5. And surprisingly, we have another priest card, Fire. I think this card is one of the first cards which I like to call cards with infinite potential. Like basically, the way how I judging like overpoweredness card is basically like this. Card have certain value and a certain effects, and I'm trying sort of like realize like how powerful effect is for this price. And almost all cards which I mentioned so far, they have sort of like a limit. Binding Heal, for example, as I said, is overpowered, but overpowered that it is, it has fixed effect. It do specific thing and that's it. If I mention, for example, another example of really powerful card is this card. This card also have an effect. The limit of how much powerful this card can be, the limit is really high. It's ridiculously high. But there is still limit. With Fire, however, that's not the case. This card have no limits. This card can potentially increase damage of your card on absolutely insane level. Granted, it is a little situational, that is true, but at the same time, every player which, unless he is stupid or she, unless it's stupid, It's used this card the way to get maximum effect for it. For example, okay, I can give you like example how ridiculous this card is. So imagine you play some really powerful card, okay, and by powerful I don't mean something powerful as, let's say, Deadwing. No, I've been thinking about something even more powerful, and that is the ancient one. If you summon Ancient One, then you get card with 30 damage and 30 hit points. That is absolutely insane. I mean, sure, you need to use these two cards both at the same time, which is relatively difficult, but it is possible. And here is where things go to play. If you combine Priest Divine Spirit spell with the mentioned Interfire, then you can basically increase its Ancient One health to 60 and then 120. Can you imagine this? That is basically minion who have 4 times more health than your hero. It's gonna one kill anyone. It's gonna survive pretty much anything. Well, except like the cards which can destroy things instantly, obviously. But still, this card is actually able to take advantage from these insane hit points and increase its damage to being equal its hit points, which mean this card can for 1 crystal increase Ancient One damage from 30 to 160, which is basically 90 hit points for 1 crystal, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I can guess yes through this card. Once again, it is a little situational. Like, this card have not such kind of power like you can do it like without anything. You need to have like specific circumstances to do it. But when you do, it is insanely powerful. And in some occasions, I win with this card in round 3. And I'm not even kidding. This is how crazy this card. Like, I don't even need to defeat my enemies. Sometimes people simply give up after I play, like somewhere when turn 3, I play combination like this, and Interfire. In turn 3, suddenly I have cards which have 10 health, 10 damage, and people immediately give up. And I don't blame them. This card is ridiculous. On top of that, like, if you think like that's by itself, it's pretty powerful. This is actually not everything what this card do. This card go even beyond that. You can actually not only increase health of your minions, you can also use it to card decrease your enemy minions if you know how. So if there is a minion who have lots of damage but low hit points, then you can basically use it against your enemy minion, because you can target any minion, including your enemies. Which means there are many enemies. There are actually many enemies. I can give you like a nice example here. For example, this one. 9 damage, that is a lot. So let's say I don't want to take 9 damage in the face. So if my enemy play this card, I can use Interfire against this card and reduce his health to 5 permanently for 1 crystal. So I think this card is another example of cards which Blizzard go like crazy, and I'm pretty sure somebody can say like, yes, it is situational, and I agree, yes it is. But still, I think this card is a little too much. I think this card is another example of card which can need a limit, because thing is, this card have a potential increase, like give any card basically limitlessly high damage when it's used right. And I think that is not good. I think this card needs a limit. I think this card needs a limit, like, let's say how much maximum damage it can down. I mean, sure, if you give it some damage, it probably will be less effective, but that's this point. I would say this card can do this, exactly this effect, but at the same time I would say damage of minion cannot exceed value, let's say twice as much than it's typical for one crystal card. Let's say like 4. If maximum bonus for damage which this card can do is 4, that would make this card much well balanced, because it's still 4 plus 4 for damage for one crystal. It's still a lot. It's still really powerful effect. It's still worth it, but it's not nearly as crazy as infinite. Seriously, I think this card needs to be nerfed. Number 4, humility. So yeah, I think this is another example of card which can potentially reduce, like, this card is potentially limitless. It doesn't matter how much this card don't reduce damage of your enemies for certain value, which is something which you probably expect. Instead, it's reduce it to 1. However, which is effect which is really its own way. It's almost same like in their fire, which I mean before. However, unlike in their fire, reason why this card is higher, because I think this card is a little less situational than in their fire. It's work for anyone, and honestly, no, this card is just not good. This card is overpowered. I mean, seriously, like, reduce to 1 anybody. Why? Like, explain me one thing, Blizzard. This is one thing which I really don't understand. Okay? There is cards such as, for example, this one, which for 1 crystal give you 3 attacks, which, by the way, it's also a lot, but I don't think this card is nearly as overpowered as anything on this list. Not by the long shot, no way. But yeah, let's say +3 is standard, because whatever reasons. Okay? So if this card giving minion +3 attack for 1 crystal, then you should think, like, if there is card which reduce damage, have same effect, basically reduce damage to 3. But no, this card can reduce it to 1. No matter how much damage you card have, this card reduces damage to 1, which I think it's pretty ridiculous. And it's too much. I think it's just too much. And like I said, I somehow feel this is a little less situational than in their fire, which is the reason why in their fire is actually lower. Yeah, I don't think there is anything else which I can say about this card. Number 3! And of course, no surprise, we have a Hunter's Mark. So this card is one of the many reasons why I hate Hunters. Because this card, it can basically do, this card, that is actually so interesting. This card can technically do almost same thing like previously mentioned humility. However, the reason why I think this card is more overpowered is this one. Here is the thing. Unlike damage, it's reduced health, which make big difference, because thing is, like, if you damage is reduced to 1, that is pretty bad, especially if you have some minion with really high damage. But the thing is, it's not end. The card can still function. In fact, there is actually several cards which can be still useful even if this spell is applied on it. Because What's actually make them effective, it's their special ability, not their damage. Which means if you cast this card, let's say for somebody such as Hogger, or I don't know, some card which is giving you some bonuses, this card still can function and this card can still survive. True, its damage sucks, but cards survive. However, Hunter's Mark reduces your health, which means you are literally one hit from death. And when Hunter uses this card, then usually he using one situation where he can easily give you that one damage. Which means this card is basically almost instanted. There is like 99% chance this card die immediately in this turn, or possibly in next turn. The only thing which you need, just apply one damage, no more than just single hit points is enough to take down even most powerful card in the game. Do you remember when I mentioned that situation when you have the ancient one with the combo like Divine Spirit in their fire with 120 hit points, which is basically 4 times more than the new hero? Well, guess what? If this card is applied on this card, then suddenly can be taken down with one hit. What the hell? What the hell? Seriously? This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's make no sense. It's unfair for other classes which cannot do such a thing. Well, other classes can have own share of tricks, but that's the thing. They are different, and that's make the balancing little tricky. That is the reason. I think this is way too much. Like, think about it. Think about it. Think about it for a second. Like, if you think about it logically, imagine you have under your command something like really powerful. Let's say somebody such as nothing less than Deathwing himself. Like Deathwing, the Deathwing, one of the most unfamous dragon in the lore of World of Warcraft. Okay, he's like absolute badass. This is one of the most powerful cards which can cost in a game, like without combining any spells effect or whatever. Far well, maybe exception on already mentioned ancient one, but that's need 2 cards actually. So you apply on this card Hunter's Mark, and after that you can basically kill it by throwing stone. Like such a spell actually isn't in the game, but even if this spell be in the game, you can seriously kill Deathwing with 1 damage. Like pretty much anyone can hit him. Like what the hell? That makes no sense. Why this card is so ridiculously overpowered? For 1 reduced health to 1 for 1 crystal? Are you serious? That's nuts. That's insane. Like, I think like person who made this card was probably on high, if not something worse. This card is absolute joke. And another thing which actually is really like questionable. This card basically do almost same thing. Pretty much almost same thing like this card. Only difference between them is first you need injure the minion and then you can destroy it with this card. With Hunter's Mark, it's opposite. You need first apply Hunter's Mark, then you apply 1 damage and then card die. With this card you doing exactly things in opposite order, but basically it's the same thing. Here is the weird thing. Here is the one thing which I don't understand. The Blizzard recognized the execute is too strong for 1 crystal, and thus they basically nerfed the card, actually increased its cost to 2. In my opinion, that is still too low for such a powerful effect. but at least they recognize the card is overpowered. Despite the fact Execute and Hunter's Mark work basically exactly the same way. They basically do almost same thing. Like, only difference between these two cards, how they killing, is first with the Hunter's Mark you apply first Hunter's Mark, then 1 damage. With the Execute you do damage and then you do Execute. But only thing is which order do this. Otherwise it's a basically same thing. With Execute, Blizzard nerf the card, increase its cost to 2. Then why they don't do exactly same with this card? I don't get it. It's basically same card. It's basically same effect. So something which is considered as overpowered for warrior is okay with the priest? Why? What's the logic? I don't get it. It's make no sense. I hate this card, and I'm pretty sure I'm not only one. So yeah, another really disappointing card. So let's move on. Let's do another one. Number 2. Okay, we have a corruption. Can anybody be surprised? I don't think so. So this card is just as bad as the previous one, but honestly I think it's worse. First one thing, this is just like not something which make card necessarily overpowered. I wanna mention this because I'm just confused. In World of Warcraft there is actually a spell of the same name, but what this spell work is actually doing damage over time. Unlike this card, which basically destroy card. Not immediately in the next turn, but still destroy. The reason why I think this card is actually even worse, even more overpowered than, for example, previously mentioned Hunter's Mark is, with Hunter's Mark, your minion is not destroyed. He have just 1 hit point. True, that is really close to destruction, and it will be probably destroyed really soon because 1 hit point. But there is still chance it wouldn't. Like, maybe you can, maybe Hunter may have not enough mana to do something, or maybe this minion may have Divine Shield, and eventually in next turn you can give the minion buff, so minion may survive. The point is, Hunter's Mark don't destroy card immediately. Something else can do this really fast, but there is really small chance the card actually may survive. With corruption, however, this is not the case. The card which is infected by corruption is doomed. It's done. I mean, sure, somebody can say like, you don't lose card immediately, you lose it in the next turn. But that really can't change absolutely anything, because point is, you still have a card which destroy your minion for 1 crystal. Any minion in a game. Also, true is technically there are some other cards which can help you deal with this effect. There is not too many of these cards, but this card do exist. There is several cards in the game. Let me give you examples of few cards which can actually do something and which are actually sort of able overcome corruption. There is few of them. Let me see. Where is it? Where is it? It is here. So where isn't it? High card. I don't know. So maybe it's card here instead. Let's see. Where is this card? I know it's here somewhere. Wait. Oh yes, this card. So if your card been corrupted, you can use this card, which is effectively able transfer card into some another card of the same cost. It is not necessarily the best solution, but it's still better than if your card die. Another example of cards which can do something about this, there is actually few shamans cards which can give you a chance. Like you can use this card, so the card will die, but at least will be reborn in the next turn. You can do another things. You can do things like, let's say, use this card, which can effectively reset the unit, and again, a unit can like survive the effect. There is, I believe, another one. One of the new cards did something about this. I believe it's Shaman card. Let's see. Where is it? I'm pretty sure there was card which can do something about this, and I'm pretty sure it is Shaman card, or maybe it's a free cost card. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe it's free cost card. It's from latest expansion. Let's make this easy for me. Oh yes, this one. So if you do this, then card will still die, and you still wasted like mana used for its summoning, but at least get it back in your hand. So it is also not the best solution, but it's still solution. You can also silence the card, but if the card has some powerful ability, then this is something which you probably don't want to do. And of course, there is some rogue cards, well, or not necessarily just rogues, but basically any card which can return cards in your hand. So yes, true is there are few cards. There is few cards which can actually be used sort of like heal corruption. Like it's not necessarily healing, but dealing with this one way or another. That is if you have such a card in your hand, because if you're playing, for example, Murloc deck, then you most likely don't want to have this card in your deck. You most likely want to have many Murlocs as you can. So it's really rare if somebody is able to deal with the card, and in most situations, in fact I don't remember back in the days when I used to using like for my Deathrattle deck. Today I have Hunter, but back in the days I used to have like Shaman, and when I have used to have Shaman, I actually used to use in a few occasions, I few times use my resurrection to basically cancel corruption. But the situation, even in situation where you have cards which can do something like this, then A, you need the card in your deck, and B, it might be in your hand when a moment when this card is used, which may or may not have happened. So this card technically can be conquered, but it's really difficult. You need to be extremely lucky. I think for one crystal this card is ridiculously powerful. Absolutely insanely powerful, and it can destroy anything, and it's cost you one crystal. For God's sake, Blizzard! Seriously, what is wrong with you? Why this card even exists? Why, on top of that, why this card don't work exactly same way how it's work in a World of Warcraft? I have no idea. If this card don't destroy, instead of destroying you minion, do like damage over time. That would be much better. First, it will be a much closer original card, which I'm sure, I know there's many players which actually can appreciate such a thing. And B, will be much less overpowered. But like this, the card is insanely powerful. Absolutely insanely powerful. The question is, and yeah, and again, this card has basically infinite power. It's able to destroy anything, like even like some ridiculously powerful card. So yeah, the question is, if this card, powerful what it is number 2, what can be actually possibly number 1? Well, let's find out. Number 1! Do I really need to explain why this card is number 1? So, this card, just like Corruption, can destroy for 1 crystal any card in the game. But unlike Corruption, it's do this immediately. I mean, sure, you opponent, as a punishment, you opponent can draw 2 cards, which honestly I don't think is nearly enough compensation for lose 2 minions, especially if you think like draw 1 card is pretty much worth of 1 crystal, which means this card is technically 3 crystals, but that still make it 1 cheaper than Assassination. Okay, and Assassination is also really overpowered. So what is Assassination? Oh no, Assassination is actually cost 5. So that makes this card even more overpowered. So yeah, this card is pretty ridiculous. Like it really is. Like destroying your card, like even if you enemy draw 2 cards, I think that is nearly enough the compensation for 1 lost card, especially if it's something powerful. But yeah, like only good thing about this card, fortunately, there is really not too many people who actually using this card, which is actually surprising for me, because this card is ridiculously powerful. Seriously, what we have here is card which can for 1 crystal destroy anything. Obviously, yes, there is truth, there is some cards which are actually have this ability. Basically, you cannot target them with a spells or hero powers, so these cards are actually protected. Okay, that is nice, but not all cards have this ability. In fact, this ability is actually really rare, and that is not a good thing. I think this card is like, with exception to this card, with exception of these cards, Naturalizer can destroy any card. It doesn't matter how much health the card have. Like, you can destroy anything. You can destroy Deathwing. You can destroy the Ancient One. You can destroy Deathwing, which like with some crazy buffs, which make him like 4 times stronger than he already is. Same thing with the Ancient One. This card can even bypass Divine Shield, which normally is able survive 1 hit no matter how strong this hit is. And this card can still destroy even like cards with the really. This card is so ridiculously overpowered, it's not even funny. Like I said, I should probably rant more about this card if people actually use it more, because I think most people probably don't like the fact your opponent get 2 cards, but the fact is, this card is, I think that is, of course, every card on this list, like, just represent my opinion, obviously, but I don't think I need to, like, exactly telling this, because it seems to be like something which everyone realizes. But I think this card is most definitely the most overpowered 1-cost card, like, in entire game. I actually try to find something more powerful than this card, but I wasn't able to, because there is basically nothing else. Like everything, like every card here which I mentioned so far have either some sort of restriction or limit or some specific condition. This one, however, have nothing like that, and I think that is something which make this card like ridiculously overpowered. I mean, sure, in theory there is few cards. There is actually few cards which I guess I can technically mention. Like, for example, there is card this one can do basically same thing, but I don't think this card is nearly as overpowered, because you can actually stop this card with several different ways. First, you can, if you have a spell, you can destroy it by some spell. It has just 1 hit point. You can sacrifice some low minion. You can protect your minions with towns. So against, I mean, it still can do lots of mess, but compared to Netherlice, like, Netherlice can destroy cards immediately. So I think this card is a winner. And another thing which I wanna, like, say, even if I said, like, for example, Jade Idol is like below this card. Do you know why it's below this card? I tell you why. Because Jade Idol, no matter how strong golem you can summon, even if you summon the most strongest Jade Golem, which is possible in a game, Netherlice can still destroy it. No matter how strong he is. So yeah, I think that's the reason why this card stands above all others. And only good thing about this card is the fact not too many people actually using this card, which is really surprising how powerful this card is. It's really rare if druids actually using this card. It happens sometimes, but it's surprisingly rare. Like I said, people probably don't like the fact the card let your opponents get 2 cards, which people may think is a little dangerous, which makes sense, because due to the how really randomized about luck this card is, then these 2 cards which your enemy can get can be your doom. So it's card which basically helping your enemy, which, and especially if your enemy is low on the cards, then playing this card and giving him like 2 extra cards, that is something which you probably don't want to do. I mean, this is the reason why I even don't have this card. I used to have it, but I eventually this is something which is not like fitting to my strategy. So yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. This card is still ridiculously powerful. So I think that is everything which I have on this list this time. Next top 10 which I do, we will focus on 2 crystal cost card, which that will be definitely fun, because there is, like I said, there is many overpowered cards in the games, and like separate this for each category, for each crystals, is something which probably I should do sooner. I feel like this is something which I did, because like I said, there are some cards which are ridiculously powerful, and having simple top 10 most overpowered card in the Hearthstone, I really feel like this is not enough and I should definitely do this from start. Well, I learn. Sometimes I doing progress slowly, but I doing progress eventually. So yeah, so next time we do top 10 most overpowered 2 cost card. So yeah, so I think we are done for today. I don't think I have anything else to say, and we can hope when maybe one day Blizzard go to its senses and realize how ridiculous these cards are and nerf them, and hopefully it's make better game with less overpowered cards. So yeah, so anyway, and as always, thanks for your time and I will see you later.